Michelangelo de Lodovico Buonarroti Simoni is one of the world's most famous artists. He was born in 1475 in Florence, Italy. At that time, Florence was at the beginning of the Italian Renaissance, experiencing the greatest flowering of arts in history. Michelangelo's father felt Michelangelo's interest in drawing and the arts was a disgrace and did not support his talent. Michelangelo's father gave up and allowed Michelangelo to become a painter's apprentice as a teen. There, he learned to grind and mix paints and prepare surfaces for painting. He studied the human form and natural subjects. Michelangelo first drew, then modeled in clay, before sculpting his subjects. At the age of 19, he was offered a patronship by Lorenzo the Magnificent. Lorenzo was the head of the Medici family, wealthy and influential bankers in Florence who supported the arts of the period. When Lorenzo died, he was succeeded by his son, and Florence entered a decade of conflict. Papal heretics began claiming the emerging artwork as pagan and works of sin, and ordered the burning of art, books, and other treasures, called the Bonfire of the Vanities. Because he was not yet famous and needed to make money quickly, he decided to try forgery. Michelangelo sculpted a version of Cupid, smearing it with organic material, then burying it. Burying sculptures produces the appearance of old age. A dealer sold the sculpture to a cardinal in Rome. In 1496, the cardinal summoned Michelangelo to Rome. Michelangelo's sculpture Cupid was too individual, and he had been caught forging. Rather than punishing Michelangelo, the cardinal commissioned Michelangelo to sculpt a statue. Michelangelo sculpted a large statue of Bacchus, the Roman god of wine. The statue appeared intoxicated and was considered overly sexually explicit, and was rejected by the cardinal. Michelangelo was devastated, but learned a valuable lesson. Michelangelo was next commissioned by a French cardinal to produce a sculpture of Mary cradling her son. Michelangelo went to the quarry himself to choose the slab of marble. Although the cardinal died before completed, Michelangelo unveiled the Pieta and eventually received payment in a large sum. The Pieta, sculpted in a way that was less explicit, was considered a masterpiece, but still did not bring Michelangelo the fame he desired. In an attempt to be remembered, Michelangelo did the unheard of and signed the Pieta sculpture. Michelangelo was unsocial and competitive with other artists of the time, at one point stating, "My wife is my art, and my works are my children." When he was alone, he claimed to hear the voice of God. Michelangelo returned to a Florence in turmoil, as the Pope and the new Republic were at odds. Michelangelo was asked to sculpt a huge slab of marble, which two other artists had failed to do. The marble was flawed, but Michelangelo felt it was God's will he complete the statue, and his reputation was on the line. Michelangelo intensely studied the human body before beginning the sculpture process. Rumors surrounded him as he dissected corpses to become familiar with what was under the flesh of man and complete the sculpture. David, 5 meters tall and weighing several tons, was completed in 1504. Michelangelo then invented a vehicle to transport the David suspended above the ground in a wooden structure. This began his career as an engineer. David was moved to the front of the palace despite rival Leonardo da Vinci's argument that David should be placed in a less prominent location. Michelangelo was paid a larger sum of money for David than Leonardo would make his entire life. Michelangelo had achieved his goal of fame and fortune. In 1505, Pope Julius II commissioned Michelangelo to sculpt his tomb. The commission was cancelled, but Michelangelo had embezzled the first payment and fled to Florence and bought a farm. The Pope requested Florence return Michelangelo to Rome, and Florence encouraged he return to avoid war with Rome. For punishment, the Pope ordered Michelangelo to paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, the size of a football field and over 20 meters high. Michelangelo considered the task overwhelming. Because he did not consider himself a good painter, and as a perfectionist, Michelangelo felt he would be shamed and dismissed by the church. His first step was to design and build a scaffolding system that enabled Michelangelo to paint the ceiling while the chapel was in use. Pope Julius presented a design plan surrounding the New Testament. Michelangelo considered the design to lack drama and scope of human form, so he painted the stories of the Old Testament. Began in 1508, and after many delays the ceiling was completed in 1512. Michelangelo again returned to Florence at the request of the Medici family. The Medici family requested he build a church facade and the family library. Acting as an architect and designer, Michelangelo completed the library. Again, conflict between the Medici family and the New Republic government caused Michelangelo to flee back to Rome. Here he completed the front wall of the Sistine Chapel. Despite the fact that nude forms were no longer accepted as they had been when the ceiling was painted, Michelangelo painted the Final Judgment with many nude forms. Michelangelo was given his final task in his 70s. He was requested to be the architect of New Rome, following contemporary Renaissance styles. The most famous building in his new plan was the spiritual home of the Catholic Church, St. Peter's Basilica. Michelangelo died in 1564 at the age of 88. His plans for New Rome were not completed until many years after his death. Michelangelo died the wealthiest and most famous painter, sculptor, and architect in the world. He considered himself not a mere mortal, but divine, God's sculptor, painter, and architect.